Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to get back on the Outlaw and get it finished up in this video. I'm going to keep this one short. I know the other one was pretty long, but I wanted to get into some carb detail because I find that a lot of people seem to enjoy that if they're rebuilding these carbs at least. But I know I can get rather long-winded on it, but I'm trying not to. But anyway, what I'm going to do in this video again is we're going to get the carb rebuilt. I'm not going to show it on camera because I've done enough of those on camera. I'll just get that done off camera. Then we'll get it installed back on the bike, see how she fires up. I'm sure she'll be fine at that point. The other thing we need to do on this bike, of course, is the slave cylinder for the clutch. Now this one, this one kind of not confuses, but it's a little different to me because it is a mineral oil, that Magura blood oil, which is mineral oil based. Fluid, hydraulic fluid. This stuff doesn't evaporate, according to what I read. I'm no chemist, but I went on the Google machine, and according to them, or the site I referenced, mineral oil doesn't evaporate. So, of course, it's a closed system anyway. And it's not leaking up here. I'm 100% sure of that. It's not leaking here. So it must have leaked out down at the slave, which is probably why KTM did it that way. Now, if you take a look at this, you can see that this is direct access to the inside of the crankcase. Normally on these motorcycle engines, you have a separation between a clutch slave cylinder and the engine internals. You still have your push rod and so forth that goes through. And this is, of course, the setup when you have your slave on the left side and you have a push rod that goes across through to the clutch on the other side of the engine, which is really typical. I'm not talking about the ones that have the lever and a cam action on the actual clutch side, But these types, hydraulic clutches, on a other type of motorcycle, that is isolated. Essentially have a seal, on that push rod. And so there's no way for brake fluid in that case to get into the engine. So that's probably why they use a mineral oil on this side because of the way this is designed. Because, if you had a failure of the slave cylinder, get an O-ring or seal, whatever's in there, if you were using brake fluid, you'd get brake fluid inside the motor, which would be bad. But mineral oil, who cares? I mean, they make motor oil out of that shit. So that's probably why it was done that way. The only thing I can surmise here is that this leaked, went inside the motor, no big deal, because it is mineral oil. It's a very small amount, and it needs to be rebuilt. So I have a kit coming for that. It should be here today. But to fire this up, we naturally have to put something back on there. So I'll probably just put the gasket and this back on to fire it up. I may even try to bleed it up, but if it's leaking, why bother? That blood oil, or Magura blood rather, is not cheap. So probably just put it on there just enough to get it fired up so we don't spit oil out of there. And we'll try it at that point. But yeah, that's the plan here, okay? So I got everything laid out here, ready to go. Like I said, off camera, we'll get the thing rebuilt. This is where I get the kits from, JD Jetting. This is definitely the correct kit for this MX style carb. And I got everything ready to go. So I'm going to do that off camera. We'll get it back on the bike, and we'll see how she goes. All right, the carb's all done. I haven't put it in yet because what I did was I put a battery in that the customer gave me, a brand new battery, and I did charge it up. And I have the ignition. I have this flipped over, obviously. Ignition's down here. I got no power when I turned the key. And so I metered up the battery. Of course, it's got power, and I metered up the mains, a little bit further out of the battery, and it's got good power. And I metered up this red wire, which is over here on the right to you on your screen. And that's got power, but nothing coming out of the switch. So when you turn it on, see what happens? See? So, now he mentioned to me something about this switch being finicky. But that's not finicky. Finicky is if you can't get the key to turn because the grind, or the cut rather, on the key is not quite right. This has got a contact issue. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to unplug this, put you up on the stand. Let's take the switch apart because you can see this one is disassemblable, if that's a word. And we'll be very careful about it because there's usually springies and contacts in there. And we'll see if we can correct this. Otherwise, we're going to have to buy a new switch. Hopefully, we don't have to. Yeah, this is all rusty. It's got these wavies that are the washers on top of the nut here that holds it in place. So you can see it's pretty bad. The terminals are not so bad. And the wire end of the plug is not bad either. So this is internals. Now, I might be able to get away with trying to flood this with contact cleaner. I don't have any. WD-40 works pretty well. Might work temporarily, but that's not going to be a permanent solution. So I'd like to do that. And I marked the orientation of the cover to the front of it by putting a silver marker. I don't see any evidence of anybody jabbing on this, so this will probably be a virgin attempt at taking this apart, if I can get it apart. A lot of times you can. It's got these little clips. Push it down. Actually, this part raises up over this. You got to be kind of careful with it and work them out evenly. Without breaking them. You don't want to break these little bridge areas here. If you do that, then you got another problem with the switch mechanically going back together. It's one of these deals where you pop one and the other one goes back in, so you got to kind of just work it out. Now there's going to be, see, that one just went back in. There's going to be probably some springs and some contacts, but I don't have much of a choice here. Either that or we got to replace the switch. And I bet you this sucker is not cheap. This Polaris crap is wicked expensive. Alright, there we go. We're getting in now. Alright, so we got them kind of broken off. Not broken off. I mean, broken loose. Pushed back. You can't see that, can you? You got to get that little edge over it is what it is. You see we got a little space there on this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get her apart now real carefully if I can. Yeah, this thing is just full of crap. You can kind of see it in the space there that is opening up. Definitely some green snot inside there. Oh, okay, that one's an easy one. So there are a couple of springs in these contacts right there. You gotta watch those. Alright, so those have to be your main contacts. And they would go up against inside here. And it was grease, but it's got all sorts of goo in it. This may be a pretty simple fix. What you're going to watch out, again, is these guys right there with the little springs on them. And they have to be loose to move in and out. If they don't move in and out, then they're not putting pressure out on the contact point. So what I'll do is, well, off camera, I'll get this all cleaned up and we'll pop her back together. But this one's an easy one. Sometimes these switches are complicated and they have a number of pieces that want to fly out, and you got to have 6 hands to put them back together. In this case, I think my 2 will work. So let's go ahead and get it cleaned up, put it back together. Okay, so there's, now that I've cleaned some of the grease off, you can see there's a number of contact points in here that those bridge. So these guys bridge across a couple of different contact points, and there are 2 at a time, I would imagine, depending on how this is set up, because there's only 3 terminals on it. But anyway, that really doesn't matter. What matters is, you see this corrosion right there? That's probably the main power side. And so there's your contact problem there. And so we're going to have to do is clean that up and clean the rest of them up. And then put a little dielectric grease in. Now, the reason why I use a little grease in here is to prevent this from happening. But dielectric grease is kind of counterintuitive. It would suggest that it would be an insulatory thing. But what happens is these contacts, when they're clean, they essentially push the grease out of the way and they make good contact with the metal. And the grease, any film left over there, is not going to be a problem with continuity. And it remains enough of the grease on those spots to keep them from corroding in the future. And like I said, you could see that there's a bunch of grease in here. Probably some, it may have been dielectric or some white lithium grease or something. What we have right here is definitely a problem in continuity. And there's your main problem right there. There's your problem, lady. So what we're going to do is clean all that out and I'll get it back together. You know, but I want to show you what the problem was, since now we can see it with all that goo in there. Alright, we're looking good, folks. Let me show you. Wiggle the switch around really well, a lot, and it doesn't do it, doesn't flicker. Now this switch really needs to be replaced, and I'll put that in the service ticket, but it's not that expensive actually. It's going to be, it would be about 120 bucks to the customer if I was going to replace this, which, you know, is pretty expensive for a switch, but I was thinking it'd be more like 200 or 300 bucks because Polaris just likes to rape you on stuff. So yeah, we're good there. So before I fry anything else, we'll stop doing that on-off thing. And then we'll put it back together. Then we'll get it to the point again where I have the carb in off camera. We'll get it cranked around, see how she fires. I got you off the lapel so you can hear this. That thing makes everything sound like it's underwater. You know, the noise cancellation part of it. So carb's in, air filter's in. I did crank it over, just a dash of fogging oil in there. I'm not really too happy the way it cranks. I think that battery, to be honest with you, is a little small for it. It's physically shorter. I'm not sure if it's the right cold cranking amps. I don't have the screws into the airbox yet, but that's just for testing right now. I did test the carburetor upside down with a pressure tester to make sure that it was holding okay. Because remember, I changed the O-rings on this. It would be no different than changing the O-rings on multi-carb racks rather. So that all passed. I'm going to put some fuel to it. I'm going to turn the idle down because I had this out to lubricate it. I'm not really sure where that's supposed to be yet. See if she pops off. I have the door closed right now because I don't want to lose all the AC, but if she pops off good, then we'll open it up and give it a proper run. Alright. Oh. Turned it off, dummy. Alright, she's going to run good. I got to dial the idle in. I'm pretty sure the slow jet's good, so I'll open up the place and then we'll see how she runs, because otherwise we'll get gassed out here. I'm like, why won't this thing start? Well, it's because the ignition was off, dummy. No choke, no enricher. Alright, I think I need to dial the slow in. It was at 2.5 turns. I set it at 2 3/4. That may be a little bit too rich for it. I should have just left it at 2.5, because after it comes down and wants to bog back down, it really sounds more like it's rich. So I can get at the adjuster pretty easily. There's plenty of room on this one to use my tool. I love it when I get to use my tool. This screw is actually pretty difficult to get at. I mean, not get at, you can get at it with the tool, no problem, but the pilot screw rather is much more narrow, much smaller diameter than the hole in which it sits. And it's just really easy for this to get cattywampus and want to go next to the thing as opposed to slipping on. So it's very difficult to do it by feel. And I think I got some turns on it, but it is really hard to get it nailed on straight. Like right there, you think you're on it, and open it back up just a little bit. cooling fans are just kicking on, so it's a good time to turn it off. I did check all the fluids, everything. Coolant level, oil level. You know, I did everything to make sure that I wasn't starting it up and damaging it. So I think we're going to leave it right there. That's pretty as tight as I can get it. So, okay. Next shots you'll see probably won't be today. I'll probably wait until tomorrow and finish this video up because I don't have the parts yet to do whatever I need to do on this slave. So they should be coming today, but I'm not 100% sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to button up the video right now. You won't see it at this point, of course, but tomorrow, if I can get it finished by then and get this all rebuilt, we'll take it out for a shake, put the GoPro on it, and you'll see what I mean about this thing. It just is a freaking animal. We're officially down the rabbit hole on this job, folks. You saw from the clips it ran pretty good. What you couldn't tell from the clips was that it was backfiring on some decel. I was kind of hoping it would pick it up, but the GoPro must have been washed out by the engine noise. It was pretty bad. There was a couple of points too where you'd flick the throttle after it had been idling for a little while, and all you do is hit a little bit and it would just go and it would die. The only thing I can attribute that to is I'm going to go ahead and replace the jets, because I can't be 100% sure there's not some plaque or crud in there that's causing some problems. You see I have this part off and the tank off. The fuel tank is over here. This is the rabbit hole itself. And here's what the problem was. First thing was it was leaking externally around the packing. And I noticed it when I was turning it on and off while I was riding it. You know, I ride it for a bit and test it, then shut the fuel off. And I noticed that when the fuel was in, especially in the reserve position like this, it was leaking out packing. So I said, well, let me go take a look and see how much a new one is. So a new one's pretty cheap, so I figured I'd just order one. So the inside of the tank was pretty cruddy too, and I don't have any footage of that, so it's no point in looking at it now. And even though this is a plastic tank, it had a bunch of brown shit in it, so I needed to wash it out. When I wash these out, I always pull the fuel cocks, you know, so we can take advantage of the drain at the bottom of the tank. Or at least, you know, it's a flat spot without any lip or anything in there, so the water drains out pretty quick. Because this is one I clean out with soap and water in a plastic tank, you know. Well, I go to take off, I take this screw out and it comes out fine. I take this screw out and there are these guys inside there. You see those? These molded or embedded in probably brass on the bottom. Those don't look like brass up here, but on the bottom is probably brass. And this one here was spinning inside the plastic, so it seized up. So I immediately stopped and put the other screw back in and said, what the hell am I going to do? I talked to the customer and I said, you know, to get this out we're going to have to destroy it basically, and we may destroy the tank, and these tanks are no longer available. I couldn't even find one used. So I went out to my shed stash and I did find some packing and an O-ring that goes around the actual valve part to seal that off. It was branded Yamaha. It fit though perfectly. I wish I had seen that first. I wouldn't have even attempted to take it out. You know, I probably still would have to clean the tank, but nonetheless, that's really what I probably would have done, is just rebuilt it. So ultimately I did, And I have tested this, at least with some, pressure on it, kind of, pressurize the tank, couple of PSI, and then spray some soapy water around here because I haven't put fuel back in it yet. I'm still letting it dry. I'm fairly confident this is not going to leak, and I'm almost 100% actually, I am 100% confident this isn't, because it's rebuilt. So this consumed some time today, folks. Let me tell you what. It was a real pain in the ass, and it was, difficult to comprehend that we couldn't get any parts for it, but it's a freaking Polaris, so what do you expect? Yeah, so that's where we're at. Now, the plan of action here is we're going to go ahead and put new jets in. Carb I got over here, and we're going to rejet this with the stock jets. I've already checked the TPS and adjusted it. It's at the maximum of its adjustment, but I went right on, spot on the service manual data, so I'm going to redo that just to make sure. And then we're going to, put the new jets in, and we're going to try it again. This guy right there, which I didn't take out originally, is definitely a D-cell enrichment valve, like a diaphragm. And I didn't take it out originally because I wasn't sure if it was bad. I didn't want to disturb it that much, but I had to. Right there, there's a spot where there's an O-ring that seals it off. This is where it gets its vacuum impulse from, right off the mains on the intake side. See that hole right there? And that O-ring was kind of a flat one, one of those square ones, square-edged. And it was kind of rolled over, so I found a fat round one that fit in there nicely, so I got that fixed. So I'm hoping that helps take care of that. So I'm just letting you know what the status is, because like I said, it did run, and it ran well. I mean, it hauls ass. I mean, I couldn't even get it out of second gear hardly. It's just so fast. But with the thing popping on D-cell and a couple of times where it went toosh and just didn't want to run when you hit the throttle, I stopped, and we're going to reevaluate and fix that. So the next clips, we'll just put a couple more in from the GoPro once hopefully I get this thing dialed in completely. And then this will be the end of this video. But yeah, it's not the end of the work, but it's the end of the day for me because I'm tired. Oh yeah, folks, she's a runner now. Let me tell you what. Let me tell you what I did real quick. All I did really was just replace the stock jetting with the stock jetting, new jets. I didn't do the enricher, don't need that. That one's a good one. I didn't need that to replace, that is. It was fine. But it's a slow jet and the main jet I replaced with brand new. Now you might ask yourself, why would such a small thing make such a big change? And I think I tried to explain before that these things are extremely tight as far as their tuning, usually out of the gate because of EPA emissions of the time or whatever standards they have to follow. And if you have a jet, even if you clean it out and clean it out and clean it out, that's got a little bit of like plaque, some roughness on the inside of that bore, even if the bore is exactly the right size, when the fuel goes through that jet, it can be distorted into a stream, or the atomization when it comes through into the throw of the carburetor isn't exactly right. Now, This is mainly a theory of mine because I've done this so many times, but almost always you just got to replace the jets when they're that cruddy. I just didn't have them in stock. I tried to use the old ones. I don't know how many times I've hit myself in the head on this. I just got to really start ordering new jets right out of the gate for these things, which has been my MO for quite a while. But on this particular job, it was not because, again, I didn't have them. I wanted to try to get a turnaround quick because I got other stuff waiting. But now it is done, and we're good. I got a little bit of that D-cell backfired higher RPMs. That's hard to say, higher RPMs. I'm not really sure what that is because I did check that D-cell enricher there's a little thing on the side of the carburetor that is a little diaphragm for that. I did take that off, looked at it. The diaphragm is fine. I blew the passages out. I put a new O-ring in that, and so I can't really make that any better. This thing is running great. I don't think it's going to get any better than this, so we're going to go ahead and just let it cool off, give it a bath, put it in the storage area, call a customer, have them pick it up. So I hope you enjoyed, hope you got something out of this. I know it's kind of long, the two-parter on this, but sometimes they can get a little complicated, especially with things like these damn KTM engines that every time you turn around, something else needs to be done on them. So it's like one thing after another. There's a lot of shit I did on this, even off camera, to get it, tightened up. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. So, subscribe, like the video, ring the bell. You get notified when I put more stuff up like this. Till next time, don't just repair, restore. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.